Hello! Welcome aboard! It's another episode of Agency Automators. Today I'm here with my co-host Jordan Chu. Hey.
Hey, what's going on, everyone?
And we're here with Josh. Help us pronounce your name perfectly from DeepCrawl.
Josh Sciortino.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So this is really cool because today we're going to jump into a little bit of Python code. Josh is a tech SEO at DeepCrawl, and he wrote a really cool piece of code that's helping us get ready for, what are we calling it? Mixed Content Ageddon, which is coming soon. Do we have any clue when it's going to happen?
It's been kind of progressive, hasn't it? I mean, they've been announcing it for a year or two now, and I think they're actually slowly getting more severe in the messaging in Chrome.
Yeah. Okay, so before we jump into the code, Josh, give us a little bit of background about yourself. How long have you been doing SEO? Tell us about your role at DeepCrawl. Tell us what you're passionate about, and then we'll jump into the project.
Yeah, all right. So let's see, just really quickly. I've been just kind of building my own little websites and stuff ever since I was like a teenager, and getting into like back when Windows 98 time. Didn't really know what SEO was at the time, so I went kind of like the graphic design route from web and stuff, and I did that for a good route. And I've actually been in web, like on the organizational side, for about 10 years, and doing SEO now for just about 5 years. So I joined DeepCrawl almost a year ago. Here I'm on what we call our professional services team. So it's just a tier of when clients kind of get that extra level of consultants for people who are tech SEOs, not just CSMs who are familiar with DeepCrawl. So now I get to work with a really cool team of people, some of whom and work on really cool websites and problems.
Ashley Berman Hale was one of the kindest people to me when I got started doing SEO. She gave a speech when she was at, what was that, MozCon Local 2017, I think, Jordan. And she was at Mobile Moxie at the time, I think. And if you know me, I ask a lot of questions, and I basically machine gunned questions at her for about 15 minutes, and she was really patient with me and has been amazing since. So tell us a little bit what you could share about the professional services team, because I didn't know a ton about this, and I think it's really cool.
What can I share about it? I guess I don't know what I can't share about it, so that's good. I know that it's a similar model, I think, in some of our other crawler competitors. But from what I hear in the industry, that there is a sort of reverence towards the team that I am really fortunate to get to be on here. So that's really cool. It's we're actually about 10 people now. One of whom, so Ashley is the co-director on the team, and then she co-directs with Chris Evans, who is one of the co-founders of DeepCrawl, actually, and helped build the initial technology for it. So,
wow. Yeah. And what types of problems do you help solve? What's the scale of clients? How big are the sites?
It really varies. I mean, as you guys probably know, it just comes down to the resources that an organization has rather than its actual enterprise size. I've got a few that are, under a couple thousand. And then I've also got a couple that are some of the biggest e-commerce and et cetera websites, and, top 100 websites. And so we've all kind of got a fair distribution on our team.
Yeah. I noticed something in your Twitter feed where you were talking about, or you retweeted something that another tech SEO had posted about indexation and how getting all the pages indexed. Do you remember that tweet that you reshared, or was can you tell us how you like to handle indexation for e-commerce sites, and where do you start and what's most important to you when you're trying to deal with indexation in order to grow clicks and conversions? Like, how do you think about that?
Let's see. Well, probably to frame it. So that tweet I think was about, clients who say, step one I want you to solve is getting all my pages indexed.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, well, all your pages probably aren't quality. Google doesn't care about them. And then depending on how you handle your filtering and your faceted, like 70 to 90% of them are probably just parameterized variants of the same thing anyway.
Yeah.
So it's really just looking at what is actually the quality content. And right now, obviously, like we're starting as a field to get more into how we can ascertain that using machine learning. But some of the clearest signals are the user signals, which is what Google uses. So whatever user signals we can use, which if you have analytics, some sort that tell you those things based on your traffic, and then you can just see, like, from there too, where is Googlebot spending its time? So you can see if there's any wastes. Just kind of, if you can look at your logs and see if they're spending their time in areas that you don't want, then you can alter your internal linking or canonicalization practices to really get those internal link signals focused, at least internally, where you want them. And then maybe your backlinks will follow if they're also awry based on those signals and how those backlink refers were finding those pages.
Do you feel like we're missing, what percent of the big picture are we missing if we don't have access to log files?
I think it depends. I mean, the biggest thing that comes to mind for me is just like if there's crawl budget waste. And I know crawl budget's like this whole, it's not a finite thing, and that's kind of a separate topic, but just to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
But if there is a waste, like if Googlebot is spending a lot of time on pages you don't care about and you don't want them to be, you need to identify that. That may not be the case. And if you have a really small site and you're looking at your crawl stats in GSC and it looks pretty heavy and the number of pages is pretty equal to your page inventory, it's probably not an issue. But when you have a really massive enterprise site, especially in e-commerce, the likelihood that there is a disparity between your traffic, what you want your traffic to be at, and what Google is focusing on, there's probably a pretty big chance there is a disparity. And so that being said, I do sometimes, and I know that I think my colleagues on the team sometimes feel that when that's kind of like not an extra package or integration that an enterprise client has added, it feels a little bit like, well, this is unfortunate because there's probably some really big Easter eggs out in there to find, but there's always, of course, other things we can focus on.
Love it. Cool. Let's get back to this stuff. But the reason why we're here, and I don't want to lose focus, is to go over your really cool Python script. And as you demo it, I'd love to learn what your process of learning Python was like. And when you started to feel like you got beyond dealing with just packages and how they work or don't work with each other, and when you finally felt, if you do yet, feel competent.
I'm laughing because there's actually, so I believe a lot in documentation in your code. Also, just at DeepCrawl, I think that we want to put things out there that are going to be usable for other people as a prepackaged solution. Like, I don't want you to have to jump on a call with me and have me train you how to use something. So, but that being said, there's a comment in there that's actually like, there might be a more elegant solution to this next block of code, but this is what it does. So, I mean, it's constantly, you're constantly learning. I think that we don't have all of the skills as a whole, tech SEOs that are getting into Python that people that are developers do. I went to a conference called Gotham for Gotham City. And it was like, I couldn't find a single person in SEO there. They're talking about like this thing called Docker and just like development cycles and things like that. And just a completely different side of the Venn diagram. And so we come at it from different, so I think that Chris and I, who I mentioned, Chris Evans, who actually helped me a lot with this, we wanted to get it into like a nice place, because something we're worried about is like, is it going to be scrutinized from that other kind of viewpoint? And I think at the end of the day, like, I wouldn't worry about that too much, because we're still doing things that like nobody else is doing in our field. There may be skill sets that people that are good at Python have, but they're not applying them to the skills, the problems that we need to solve.
Right.
So
Do you find that learning how to code, and specifically with Python, has helped you communicate and collaborate with developers on the client side in a more meaningful way?
I don't know that it's helped me, but I think that, so I actually was learning HTML and CSS as a teenager. I got a little bit into JavaScript back then and kind of to put my toe into PHP, but but I've been good with HTML and CSS since, decades ago now. And so while I could understand like how the bones fit together, I never really got into like full stack development, which honestly didn't come about until several years after the late 90s anyway, in the way that we see it now. So I've kind of always, I guess, been a little bit more primed from that. I don't know. I think you just have to have some sort of patience and understanding and think like a product manager does. I think Jamie Alberico, she sets a really good example when she talks about JavaScript, because she really tries to bridge that gap, because there is some time, and that's what we're trying to do with Automator as well, which we can talk about. But yeah.
That is super cool. Can you share your screen? I might need to give you permissions here. Okay, can you demo this? This is really cool. You should be able to share your screen.
Yes. Alrighty. Just see how I can get myself set up over here. Cool. So we actually have this script public. I don't know, do you want me to kind of frame the issue about mixed content a little bit too?
Absolutely. That's the best place to start.
All right. So we actually have a report in DeepCrawl that's called a mixed content report. And even though we do JavaScript rendering, as I understand, and I could be mistaken on this, but as I believe I've been communicated to, this particular report does not render the DOM. And so this particular report is kind of, it's just looking for any assets that are going to be rendered in there, that are going to be referenced as non-secure. And then also it takes extra credits in our account, like crawl credits, to crawl images. So if there's an image on a page that we're crawling and you haven't selected that because it costs your account extra credits, we're not going to crawl those, whether they're secure or non-secure, unless they're in a link, because we obviously do crawl link, but unlinked images. But in that report, the mixed content report, it has a little tooltip at the top, like all of our reports do, and it kind of it explains the issue, which is that you have a page that is HTTPS, it's on secure, it has a security certificate, but there are assets referenced in it that are not secure. And initially, if I just go to any website, crawl.com, I have this to go to our homepage quite a lot. You would see, like, obviously the security certificate's there, the lock is there, we all know about that. But starting pretty recently, actually, after increasing warnings in blog posts, you can see there's a valid security certificate on this page, but they're saying now that your site is not fully secure. And so to users who are, they have not given us a signal yet that that's going to affect rankings. But of course, any users who are not privy to what this may mean, or are nervous about forms and their personal data, especially since GDPR, it's just kind of a signal to watch out with. And so we noticed actually that, well, we didn't notice, this is something they told us, that you can actually extract this information from DevTools in the console. So it'll tell you here, actually, mixed content, the page at blah, blah, blah was loaded over HTTPS successfully, but it was requested using an HTTP, and there's 42 issues on this page. It'll actually give you the example. And so there's kind of two levels actually. So there's the warning level and there's the severe level. And warning means that it was referenced as HTTP, as you can see in this example, but they were able to load it over HTTPS. I don't know if they're redirecting, if they're actually applying the 301 to secure redirects that you should have on your site anyways, or if they're actually just trying to render it themselves. Probably the latter. But if it loads successfully on HTTPS, you're fine. They will give you a warning, but they are now, this happened actually just within the last month, they're messaging not secure here. And then if it does not load at all, if you have an image or even if it's JavaScript or CSS that do not even load at all on HTTPS, they completely block it now. So you'll see, like we saw back in the 90s, you know, that image with the X and just completely missing. So it's getting, they're kind of leveling it up and they're getting pretty severe to their users, in Chrome at least for now.
So am I hearing you correctly that if I serve my jQuery from an HTTP domain, the jQuery isn't going to work, or just that I'm going to get the red X?
So if it actually loads as like a 200 on both HTTP and HTTPS, you'll be fine. It will load into the page, but they are going to serve a mixed content warning. And
that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
I can hardly wait for it to change to where they just block the page. Like, it seems, oh man, I wonder how long it's going to take. Okay, cool. So what's next? Do you want to show us the tool?
Yeah. So basically, Chris actually kind of implored me. He's like, you know, this is in here. He's a really busy guy, and he's actually been encouraging us all to learn Python. And he, I started getting into Python in 2018, and then I dropped off of it for a bit, and then I came to DeepCrawl, and he had been in it pretty ferociously. He's a brilliant guy, so he like picks everything up really quick, and so he was beyond me already, way beyond me. And you know, he's a busy guy, so he's like, I know this is in the console, see if you can grab it. And so I started to look into what tools could actually scrape the console log. And are you guys familiar with Selenium library?
Yes. I looked at that in your code. I saw that you were using Selenium.
Yeah, so I just went through their documentation and tried a bunch of stuff, and you actually can scrape the console log in there. It took a bit because to figure that problem out, just how to actually scrape the console log, and trying different libraries, and like requests didn't have it. And so, yeah, I think it's actually in Selenium. But so what we did is then, you know, it's not very useful to do one URL at a time. When here in the DeepCrawl team, whenever we're trying to solve a problem, we're trying to help you solve it at scale and get those insights at scale, because that's why we crawl. Like, it's not helpful if we crawl one page. So you can do that, what we just showed in the web tools, you can see that one page at a time. And even if you look at Google's documentation about mixed content, it says, it admits it right there that like, this is hard to do at scale, but here's how you do it in DevTools. So what we did is we actually wrote this into a loop where you can input a CSV of URLs, and it'll render them one at a time using Selenium, which uses Chrome driver, scrape that, pop those number of URLs into a CSV and go to the next one. And now it puts those into a CSV for you that I can just look at and then identify patterns and see if there's types or templates that have errors versus ones that don't.
Okay, can you take us through section by section? Because I have a sense of, well, I can see 30 and 31 and I understand what I'm looking at, but other folks might not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll go through it. So for anybody that wants to access it, it is on our DeepCrawl GitHub. We do have some tools that we're working on that are kind of behind the scenes here, but we've got this one right now out in the public repo. But just to workshop it on my machine here. So this is the same code. And in the first step, this is probably easier to read here, where it's actually narrower and prettier. So this is actually something that we kind of do to just split it up into like where you configure and what you need to tinker with and what you don't need to worry about. So we've got the configuration in the program. And, you know, I've seen some people import their libraries all first. Honestly, it doesn't really matter, right? As long as you're importing them before they're actually used. So we've got this cell here at the top that actually is just all of the stuff that you need to put your paths in for. For anybody who's seeing this for the first time, maybe Python for the first time, all this green stuff's comments. So you only really need to edit your URL source, which is your input, and then type in the path of where you want the output to be created. Down here is where it actually creates that output to CSV and actually creates that at this path using these columns that will then use to output those errors. And then you've got to identify where your Chrome driver is, because Selenium's going to reference that Chrome driver to render. So this is just configuration step. All you need to do actually is, you don't even need to touch this rows per run, and I'll explain that in a sec. All you really need to do is put your URL of CSVs here and then designate the path that you would like it to be output. You do need to download Chrome driver and put the path to that, and you should be good to run these cells one at a time.
Got it. After the show, I will add how to find your path to Chrome driver on different devices.
Cool.
Because I think that'll make it easier for folks. Can you explain the /? That's from the root, right?
Yeah, this is a Mac thing, so it's probably different on PC. Yep.
Okay.
So let's start with users on Mac. PC is going to be like C:/. Yeah.
Got it.
The rows per run thing. So this is another thing, actually. So Chris helped with a couple chunks here with the rows per run mechanism, which is actually a fail-safe. And so what that does is, if you're putting in, 10,000 URLs that you want it to run through, and something happens, because something always happens when a program is running. One URL breaks it, your computer crashes, the power goes out, something like that. You don't want to lose all your data. So what this does, it actually takes 10 URLs at a time, crawls them, deletes them from your source list, and then puts the output of those into this list. So it does it 10 at a time. So no matter what happens, you at least have all of those. Because it does do that, though, because it does take 10 at a time out of your source list, you want to have a backup of this. And I actually have that in the comments in here as well. So be sure to have a backup of this file, because at the end of this running successfully, this file will be empty.
So why didn't you pass that to a variable and then have the list sit in a big ass array or whatever dictionary, I guess, in Python, right?
It does do that, but it does it as a list.
Oh, sorry. I apologize. Anyone who's into Python is laughing at me in the audience, but I forgot. Dictionaries are objects, right? A dictionary equals like an object in JavaScript. I forget. List is array and doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're all objects in OOP, but yeah. I mean, you could do, so for the purposes of this program, you could do a tuple. Some people pronounce it tuple. You could do a list. You could do a dictionary. In terms of the output. But yeah, no, that's a good idea though, in terms of storing the output. Yeah, I mean, as I said, there might be a more elegant solution.
You should see my code. You'd laugh a lot.
That's how I always feel. Is like, you know what? It does what it needs to do, and so this is an ongoing thing too. I mean, I keep coming back to it. All the scripts that the rest of the team is working on, they're an ongoing thing too. So this one that's actually in here is version 1.2 because I fixed a bug in it. So yeah, but that's a good point. As for the program, so it just explains here what I just explained basically. And I mean, I can demo it too. Absolutely.
Yes.
I've got a data source for you. Cool. So we're ready to do that. But just to explain, so what's going on is this is just setting up like the options for the Selenium Chrome driver, the web driver. And here's where it is saying, it's just using a while loop, excuse me. And it's just saying, as long as that loop is more than 0, there's still URLs to go in. Take 10 at a time, since we've got that variable up there. It does output that number at the bottom of number to process, which you can see here, just to let you know the progress. And then it outputs those into a list. It works on those. And then it outputs them into the output. And so when it's working on those, here are again some just more, so you're creating that outpull data frame. You've got some more logging preferences for WebDriver. Don't use W3C. I think that it actually, we don't need it for this anyway because we're not doing any HTML validation, but I had a bug that happened with that, and it got fixed by just changing that to false. And then it's just a for loop. For each URL in that list of 10 we just grabbed, render it with Selenium WebDriver, try to get it using the request.get library.
I saw that.
Yeah, and then console, just creating a variable, get the log browser, and then we're creating, so that was actually the variable I think it's at, and then we're just creating these other variables that are empty, and then for each one, it's just another for loop that outputs that into another column, and then appends those into the columns according to that URL. And it does those one at a time, grabs those 10, outputs them, and then it quits to avoid zombies. Have you guys heard of this before? Zombies?
Talk to us about it.
I actually heard about it. I didn't even know what this is, but I heard this at Pi Gotham, the New York Python conference. And it just means like when you're running this, a new instance is going to open up of your Chrome. And
right.
With each one, you're just going to have all these zombies.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm sure everybody's familiar with it. I just didn't know if anybody knew of that like nomenclature before. So.
No, I love that. I had a Puppeteer program that I was doing something similar, scraping a whole bunch of pages, and the way that I looped it was wrong. So instead of doing one at a time, it went like and opened up X quantity of pages. It was totally obnoxious. It was like, oh man.
Hard reset. Oh man.
Yeah. I clearly don't understand how to properly create a loop yet. Pretty funny. We've all been there, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like when I was first learning, while some perpetual fact equals true, and then it crashes. Yeah. Oh man. Now there is also a problem too that I encountered where you'll get a URL sometimes and it just keeps spinning. You go to a website, just keeps spinning. It will not load. And we wanted to prevent those from actually stopping it from continuing.
Oh.
And so what I've done here is there's just an exception. So here's the whole try loop.
Yep.
Try this first and go through that. If that does not work to actually render those, then we're gonna put loaded equals false. So there's a third column. We've got the URL, the severe warning, and then the fourth column actually is the loaded false, just to let you know it didn't work. And then we print down here just that we're skipping one and we're moving on. I've only seen that ever once or twice in a whole set of like 7,000 to 10,000 URLs that I'll run overnight. So it's not usually a problem, but we just want to get that out of the way and get the bulk of the data at least. That's always the lens that I'm taking on things is like, do I need to get all of the data exactly correct, or do I have enough to at least answer the question that I want to answer? And so I can solve for that problem later down the line in another version.
Sounds like you could also, so you loop through all the URLs, everything works great, sweet, we're on the happy path, versus you loop through the URLs, you get one of these spinners, output that to another array, and then loop through those at the end.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah. It'd have to be some sort of different timeout. So one thing that I did try, so that would help kind of collect them in one bucket, but
Yeah.
the problem is they're still not going to render. And so I actually tried to,
Oh, okay. So there's another issue entirely. Okay.
yeah, so they
Oh,
just like, they won't even render. And I actually have, I'm not even sure, I don't even think this is being used anymore. So I can probably remove that. But I had some timeout in here that was trying to actually give it what we do in DeepCrawl, give it like 9 seconds to render,
yeah.
and we'll give up on it. Because all of these on all the websites I've tried, like they render in like a few seconds, moves on to the next one. You
Yep.
actually see it's really cool. The window pops up, it goes away. Next window goes away, but these will just stick around. So I don't know. Maybe after we put them into array, like you're saying, maybe we could see if we can just scrape the source instead of the DOM.
Yeah. And the other thing is that I misspoke, put it into a list. Humbly apologize.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right though. Like a list is technically an array. Like when
Yeah.
you're zooming out across all like
Yeah.
just data structures. Period.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, and then it just prints finished. So one thing that I want to do next, so I'll come like, it takes a few hours, so I'll just like run it. I'll go to bed, get up in the morning,
Yep.
and see. And you just got this whole list of 10 rows to process. So one thing I want to do is have it right where it's actually counting the sum, so you know how many it's ran before going and looking at the output. But that's it. Yeah. Should I jump into a demo?
Yes, please.
Cool. So let's see here. Let me make sure I've got my source in there. All right, so I just created just a sample of just 20 URLs in here on this same site that we were looking at. I'm just gonna, all you gotta do is just run that cell because I've got that in there. Here's this output. Let me actually, I'll just show after we run this next one. It creates that folder. I've got it in a different folder, but yeah, let me just start over actually so you don't have this finder popping in and out of you.
You're good.
All right. And I'm gonna actually make it all pretty too let's clear that output. All right. So you just run this first one. I've already got my file in there, designated my output. Chrome driver, actually I had to update this morning to Chrome driver 83. It's not running on Chrome driver 81 anymore for Selenium, I believe.
Oh.
Yeah. So I've just got them both in my folder, but I just designated the other one I want to use now. This just creates this output in those columns. Now I can just run this and then run this last column here. So I did 20 at a time just because we don't have to worry about data loss.
Looks like you like ABC News.
They've got some easy to find errors, so that was good.
So for those of you in the Twitterverse who like to follow funny people, Josh's Twitter feed is quite funny. I love your tweet that you did to LinkedIn. Hey LinkedIn, if you want a free, I heard you. He said something like, "Hey LinkedIn, do you remember what you said?" Yeah, you're like, "Hey, I heard you need a free crawl."
Yeah. I think they're one of our competitors' clients too. So.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. Oh man. So yeah, it runs really quick, and in fact, the only thing I've had to do is overnight just make sure my computer doesn't go to sleep. Just change those settings.
Yep.
But
ooh, Alanis Morissette.
yeah. All right, it's finished. So let me go find that. All right. So here's the 20 we ran. Loaded is going to be true for all of those because we didn't have to skip any and say skipping one URL. So if I go to like this one URL here in the browser, too severe, one warning. Just pop this in here where I've already got can expand the mixed content so I can see. There they are.
Hmm.
And it says
Wow.
not secure. Yep.
Wow. ABC News, fix your site.
Yeah, I think they've seen these actually, so let them know. And we run it now on I think, I don't know, about 5 clients.
Yeah.
And a couple, well, I run it on one of my clients, which is pretty small. And so we were able to run the whole site overnight. They've got a suite of sites actually. And then we're also running it on a couple enterprise sites and just doing 10,000 chunks at a time, and actually found recently on a major site that is in a really good space to do really well right now during the COVID. And so they're really good, well positioned right now, but they have like the left hand bar, where they've got like related articles and they're related videos, but their thumbnail for those is actually referenced as an HTTP, and it's pretty consistent. And so we were able to find, okay, here's exactly the pattern. It's always something consistent, right? So that's all you have to do now that you've got this data output. Is there a pattern in the URLs or at least on the page for those? And so that's what it was. It was just those thumbnails.
Do you have an internal indexation checker?
Oh,
Because it seems to me that a tool like this, plus the tool that Built Visible showed us, and the thing that's sucky is yours is Python and theirs is Node. So it's like, bah! Like you'd love to see the output in one Google sheet, right? Or one Data Studio report. Is my content indexed?
yeah.
Yes. No. Do I have mixed content warnings? Yes, no. Is there a pattern between them? Yes, no. Correlation, I guess.
It's great what you're doing though with like having these, connecting people on these topics, because now we know about each other.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
So can we look at your code again? Because I didn't see in the code where it deletes stuff from your source CSV.
let's see. Yes.
I was fascinated by that when you said it. I was like, ooh, because it takes your CSV and it reads it and it pushes all of that data into a variable, which is up, where is it? I think it's up higher.
So yeah, here's where it gets
There,
the new rows.
at df source.
Yeah.
So it pushes all the rows into a variable. So it shouldn't be deleting stuff from the CSV. I was just fascinated by that. I was like, wow, that's an interesting way to solve the problem. I hadn't thought of that.
I think that it's just a mechanism. So this is the part that Chris was using for another script.
Yeah.
This like while loop part, this part, and then this where it actually appends out.
Yep.
And then here's all the actual scraping stuff in here in Selenium.
Yeah.
And I think that the mechanism there is, the idea is that so it knows when to stop.
Yeah. And that idea of taking the ones that don't render, like that's a very interesting list of pages or whatever URLs to explore after the fact, right? Like what the hell? Why? So when you put one of those into a standard Chrome browser, they're not rendering there either?
I had, a couple that in this website in particular, even in this script, that failsafe doesn't fix it. And so sometimes it'll just be sitting there.
Yeah.
And I just got to manually click. It happens like once or twice as well.
Yeah.
But looking at those, I haven't dug into what the issue is yet.
Yeah.
Maybe just something server-side issues. So I don't know.
Love it. Okay, so more questions. Can you tell us about Automator? This is new for me, and I feel lame for admitting that, but we all start someplace, right? I'm going to pump up your Twitter feed even more. You had a great tweet about imposter syndrome. So it's what I know versus what I perceive everyone else knowing, whereas the reality is this is what I know, and this is what everyone else knows. And we all overlap a little bit. So I'm admitting that I know very little about Automator. Can you tell us all about it?
Well, dude, don't be bothered by that because we just launched it. So
Oh, good.
yeah,
I feel so bad then.
yeah. See, this is my imposter syndrome. Like, it's accurate for me, but you're not. You're the one who's not.
No, we're good.
Yeah. No, it's something that we recently launched just a couple weeks ago, and so we're all talking about it. And basically, it is just a way to help devs and SEOs communicate better. Because at least in just my personal experience on the consultant side, the same thing that we always come up against, especially now with like this new economic recession we're in and people unfortunately having to be laid off and stuff, is we don't have the resources to make these fixes. You hear the same thing over and over again. And it's like, okay, well, there's always, it comes back to how do we paint that picture? How do we make that clear? And you have your CMO, you have your CTO, you have these people who are able to sit and talk to the CEO and say, here's exactly why this is important to our bottom lines as a business. But there's no chief SEO executive, like there's no advocate for that. And so I think that this is moving in that direction. Now there's a lot more that needs to be done, but one of those foundational steps I see, and as part of this philosophy of DeepCrawl, I think is helping those two teams communicate and also enabling, doing that by enabling them to kind of come to one location. And so what Automator is, it's a SEO plugin to CI/CD. From what I understand about it so far, there's some much better people on my team to talk about it as well. But it is in the core DeepCrawl app, which you guys are familiar with. But whenever there's a launch, it does a check of that and lets you know if there's any fails on the SEO front before you launch. So what we can do already before Automator launched is we can crawl your staging site. That's never been a problem. We've been doing that for a long time. And we can crawl your live site and we can do comparisons. But now what we're doing is we're doing that as part of CI/CD as well. So it's ongoing, and you and the SEO and the devs can come to one location and communicate together.
So I'm gonna do my imposter syndrome again. CI/CD. I hear continuous improvement, but I don't know what the CD is, and I'm probably wrong.
Development. That's cool. No, I mean, I'm probably using it as a buzz term as well. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
no.
not a developer, so I don't know operationally in my brain a visualization of what that means.
Yeah.
But just continuous improvement, continuous development.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay. So does that mean that
I think it's the concept around it's beyond, what is the name of it? One of our clients uses something that is it's like hyper agile, where they're just continually launching stuff.
Oh, man, we have to have a hyper agile guest. We've already had agile guests, so we got to have a hyper agile guest. We'll have to talk to Hamlet about that.
Yeah, the name that they use is actually something that's also a name Google uses. So when we first heard it, we were like really confused that they were tying it. But yeah, if I can think of the name of that one that they use and it's helpful to you, I'll let you know. But.
Okay. Huh. Okay, cool. So you work for an SEO tool company. What did you think it would be like, and what's it like? And we're not asking for stuff that's like NDA problematic. Just, it must be so cool. You must feel mentally just like all the time.
I thought that Ashley was going to be really nice, and she turned out to be really mean. No, I'm kidding. Quite the opposite. I mean, she's amazing. Yeah, I think that I was really excited. So where I was before was an agency where I was the only tech SEO.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of like, it was like this offshoot person that didn't really get involved in things. But when they had a problem that was not related to content strategy, they sent it my way. And so I was just kind of like an island. And so I was really excited to be able to join a team of other tech SEOs and learn. And
Mm.
I was the youngest one at the time when I joined. And so I was just really excited. I mean, they have a lot of experience. I mean, one of them is, developed the tool. Another one used to be like the director of SEO for Travelocity some years ago. So I was really excited to be like surrounded by my kin. And so uh, there have not been unmet expectations in that regard. We really do get a lot of time to workshop and brainstorm this type of stuff. Where I've been before, I never would have been able to be given the opportunity to have the time, the resources, the encouragement to develop something like this, and the people to collaborate with it on. So it's
I
been really awesome.
I love that. Like I was super lucky. I merged my little agency with a bigger agency in March, April, and I have what I think of as the dream job. I get to run a task force, not run, but I'm part of a task force that we call Skunk Works. And it's awesome. We get to like build cool stuff. We get to do research. Um, there are times when I get to like I'll have a tool and I'll get to play with it. I'll build something around an API. I'll spend a couple hours playing with it, and I won't know quite what the value of it is.
Yes.
And then I share it with someone. And that's one of the things I love about Jordan is that the two of us talk to each other 5 or 6, 7 times a week. We get on a Zoom call and I'll say, look, I'm working on this. What do you think of this? And he'll go, oh, that's really fascinating. Have you considered? And then I'll go, oh, yeah, I'm a total dummy. Like, thanks. And, but I'm hearing that you get to do a lot of that stuff too. Like you get to explore and understand things in new ways. Is that part of your workflow? It sounds like it.
Yeah, so we've actually got a bi-weekly development meeting just on our team. Um, and there's a couple guys who kind of head up that, they kind of manage these products that we're working on, one of which is this one. And so they lead that meeting, but we share stuff. We also have an alternating bi-weekly just team meeting for general stuff too. And at the end of that, we have like a show and tell.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's actively encouraged. I think that it's one thing. I love talking about organizational stuff and communication, so I always come back to that. But
Yep.
I think that it's one thing to say, you should do this, I encourage it. It's a whole nother thing to implement that into how you function as a team by
Sure.
dedicating time for it, forcing collaboration by setting aside that time too. And then also like we have a kind of a budget, an additional budget that we're all given as individuals to spend on learning resources, which is really amazing too.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm lucky too in that way. I feel so blessed. Can you tell us how you've been exploring taking DeepCrawl data and using it in different ways? Like, how are you personally exploring taking it out of the tool, maybe getting it into Data Studio, or what other visualization techniques you're using? I'd love to explore that a little bit.
I think I think what you said earlier actually on Twitter is really important when it comes to is dashboarding. It's important to tell a story, and so that's like a hard thing, is actually telling that story. But what I'm more interested in is I'm more interested in like the statistics of things. I'm a statistician. I'm a linguist too, and so that's my undergraduate degree is actually in linguistics, and so I'd love to be able to do more NLP stuff, which I've been starting to get into, but there's some hurdles with the applicability of that. And I've talked to you and James Phoenix about that in your guys' Slack as well. But
Yep.
one of the first things that I always want to do in terms of just crunching the data and looking at those statistics before you even know what makes sense to pull into the story is seeing what the distributions are and seeing what it looks like. And so 90% of the time, what I'm doing with DeepCrawl data outside of DeepCrawl is mulling it around in pandas. doing pivot tables, taking the URL. We use a regex to take out a chunk of the URL and build another column so we can actually build URL segments, pivot by that, see what the distribution is. That's the same type of practice that comes into play too when we bring in log files. And so we can compare the distribution of the log files to the distribution of GSC clicks, for example, or impressions. And then we can put those into a bar chart. This is something that you can do with Matplotlib. Sometimes it's just easier to do in Excel if you've at least got your pivot table down to way under 1 million, even though our data is often way more than 1 million. And just doing like a stacked bar chart and seeing like, okay, it's high here, it's low here. So a lot of like just looking at averages and the ranges and the distributions.
So I'm hearing that you're using pandas, and I'm wondering if that's because of the scale and the size of the data and the need for speed.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah. You can't, even with like when we have, 900,000 URLs, which would be a row, we've got 200 plus elements that we're extracting for every URL. And we do have a way to do the compact CSV, but it's just so much faster. And when I initially started learning pandas, it was like, okay, it took me 4 hours to learn how to do something that would have taken me 10 minutes in Excel. But now it's completely opposite. Now that I know how to do it, it's so much quicker in pandas. And I've got the template already built for a lot of the stuff that I need to do constantly. Just another example that is straight up pandas. We have our canonicals to non-200 report in DeepCrawl, and we have our redirects report in DeepCrawl. And so I pull those out into pandas, and I do a inner join, just like a VLOOKUP basically, and find those canonical redirect loops, because that's another thing that's kind of hard to surface. And you can't.
How long does it take to do that? Do you have a template that you can share?
Oh yeah. Let's see where it's at here.
You're gonna have to share your screen. I don't know if you still are. I forget if you are. Oh, you are. Shizzle.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at my little Zoom tray at you guys.
Let's see.
Ooh, look at you. Look at you, SERP API. Are you scraping anything?
So this is actually, I don't know if I should be showing that, but that is not just my stuff. That is actually all of the stuff on the team, the professional services team.
Yeah. I'm going to I'll filter that no one will see it.
Okay.
Yep.
But here's another one that I did. This one's super easy, so not revolutionary at all, but yeah, you just bring them in. It's already in there. Here's the same as the one we talked about. VLOOKUP, it shows them and then outputs them to 2CSV. And then output file name. This is kind of a practice that Chris actually started that we've all started doing. Mm-hmm. Instead of putting the file name here, it references a variable you've already created. So you have to just do all the configuration in one at the top.
Yep. Love it.
I love the organization.
Yeah. Yeah, we want everything to be easy and plug and play for people.
It's so funny because I was reading your code in GitHub, and this is what a Python idiot I am. I looked at it and I was like, where's he importing things? Where's the import? Where's the import? And I don't know how I missed it because it's right in the cell, but I just didn't see it. And then when you pointed it out, I was like, oh, I'm such a moron.
I don't import any libraries. I rewrite everything from scratch myself. Rebuild the wheel. No, hardly.
I was like, wow, he gets a lot done in 198 lines of code.
All right.
Okay, well, that's pretty cool. Is that something that you could put up as a okay, I'm about to like start a flame war again. Can you launch that as a gist? It's a gist, right? Not a gist. What's proper?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, a gist, GIST on GitHub. Do you guys know what those are? Oh my God.
I know what you're talking about, Noah.
It's basically like a script file that you can host on GitHub. It's its own thing. It's not a repo. It's not a, so hit the plus button over on the right next to your face. Yep. New gist.
Oh. Wow. I don't know how you pronounce this one.
Yeah, I tried to do it right. I know that I'm sure Dan isn't going to watch
We
this.
should ask Dan and see what he thinks.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. I can put that up there.
Yeah, that would be, I think people would find that to be useful. And it's something you can blow up on Twitter.
Yeah, sure. It would be useful just to deep crawl people because I guess you could put any canonicals and redirects. So yeah.
Okay, so here's a perfect opportunity for you to get up on a soapbox if you want to. What outside of SEO are you passionate about that you want us to think about?
I don't know if it's really something I'm on a soapbox about. I don't think that, but I am openly gay. I don't think that there are a lot of, I haven't found really many other openly gay tech SEOs or SEOs at all. That said, I don't think this is an industry though that there's something to be feared about. I think this is a really great industry to be in. We've got a lot of great people,
Yep.
but it is still it is still isolating sometimes. So I think that that's something that anybody who's different experiences, especially now that we're kind of in a stage as a country and just as a world where we're being faced with the diversity that we do have. I think this is an amazing country. Canada too. We're two of the most diverse countries in the world. And I think that we get slack sometimes for the problems that we have to handle, but we have to handle problems that other countries don't have to because they just don't have that diversity. And so I really think even though we go through a lot of crazy shit and there's a lot of privilege that I have as an individual as well, like, we're doing some really cool things slowly but surely. So yeah. Include that if you want or don't.
No, I think it's awesome. And I didn't know if you wanted to go there. And I didn't know how to talk about it, to be honest. I didn't want to go, but I wanted to tell you, I read one of your tweets where you talked about commenting, where you console logged back to yourself. And you said, you said something like, you're a gay developer when you console log, hey girl, back to yourself.
Yeah.
and if you saw some of the code that I built, there are times when stuff that's happening in my family life ends up in my code where my kids have become variable names. Like I was fixing structured data, breadcrumb structured data, right?
Yeah.
And so I was assigning a variable name for the breadcrumb, and I called it Crummy, right? And then I assigned, my son had been really difficult that day, and so I said that Calvin, that variable, is Crummy.
That's great. All right.
So I loved your Twitter feed. I thought it was very funny, and so I'm really glad that we got to dive in. That's really amazing stuff. Well, this has been really amazing. Jordan, do you have any final takeaways or final thoughts? I feel like we've been on forever. I didn't want to take too much of your time, Josh.
You know what? The more guests that we have, and Josh is a perfect example of this, is like, I really need to learn how like these Jupyter notebooks and Python and all that stuff because I'm a JavaScript guy and I'm missing out on some juicy stuff.
Can I share why I'm laughing, Jordan?
Go ahead.
Do you know why I'm laughing?
I don't know. No.
So Jordan and I have these conversations all the time where he's like, dude, I'm so into blah, 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 blah. Let me show you. Right. So I was like, okay, let's do a Zoom and we talk about it. And usually Jordan goes, I'm totally going to build, fill in the blank. And I go, so are you going to build it or are you going to pay a dev to build it?
No, this is one of those things where I genuinely have to learn this.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I feel like learning how to code teaches you how to solve problems and it teaches you how to connect the dots. And I mean, you hear me sound like an idiot. Oh, is that an array and blah, blah, blah. But really, it's just connecting the thought process of how to deal with, how to take data from one place, aggregate it, parse it, and output it in a meaningful way so that we can then make decisions and actionable insights, right? I mean, that's what it's all about. Okay, cool. Josh, this was really cool. I'm hoping that we can stay in touch and just run ideas across each other every now and again, do Zoom meetings, and just stay friends. This has been super cool.
Yeah, I appreciate it so much. Thank you, gentlemen.
Anytime. Peace out. Everybody have a great day, and we'll be on really soon. Our next episode is going to be another Python episode, and more details to come on Twitter. Thanks so much, everybody. Peace out.
Thank you, Josh. Take care, everyone.
Bye.